Welcome back to another edition of Music Monday from the podcast Nurture the Mind. I am your host, Cole Poots, and we have yet again another music reaction. And for this week's music reaction, we are going to a band that has never been on this channel before. The whole reason that I'm choosing this band, the way that it sparked, is I posted a short on Friday, so just 2 days ago, because today is Sunday. And this was a video that I recorded on my Snapchat. I was going into my workout one night after work, and I was going through a shuffle on one of my playlists, and I rediscovered a band that I used to listen to all the time and that I dearly love, which is Chunk, No Captain Chunk. And the song that I was jamming out to in that video is Captain Blood. And it captivated me so much, I forgot how good this band is, how much I like most of their early stuff, because that's more so what I know from this group is really their first two albums. One of their albums was dropped in 2011, one album was dropped in 2013, and then I haven't really heard their material after that point. There's two albums that came after those first two. One was in 2015, and the other one was in 2021. So I figured, after basically getting captivated once again by this band, I'm like, why don't I go check out their material that I haven't listened to just yet? That would make for a good reaction. I believe this band, they're not from the US, they're from a different country. Let's see if I can read a little bit about their bio on Apple Music, just to give you guys sort of a description of this band if you don't know who they are. Okay, so they were founded in 2007 by vocalist Bertrand Poncet, drummer Jonathan Donace, bass player Matthias Riegel, and guitar players Paul Wilson and Eric Poncet. Parisian emo punk metal outfit Chunk, No Captain Chunk, who takes their name from a line in director Richard Donner's hit 1985 adventure comedy The Goonies, specialize in a heady fusion of hook-filled pop punk and blistering hardcore in the vein of bands like A Day to Remember, The Wonder Years, and Attack Attack. This group's 2009 self-produced debut, Something for Nothing, resulted in a record deal with Fearless, which would go on to re-release the album in 2011, as well as the band's sophomore outing, 2013's Pardon My French, in 2015, after a period of extensive touring that saw the amicable departure of drummer Donace. The band issued its third studio long player, Get Lost, Find Yourself. All right, so that gives you a little bit of a taste as to what Chunk, No Captain Chunk is all about. I didn't realize that their name, the way they formulated their name, came from the movie The Goonies. I haven't watched that movie in a long time, so I don't know what part they're talking about. But in reading that description, it links their sound in a similar fashion to other bands like A Day to Remember, and now it all kind of makes sense to me, like why I love these guys so much, because A Day to Remember is one of my favorite, is probably ultimately my favorite band of all time, one of my favorite bands of all time. And I listened to A Day to Remember first, and then somewhere along the line, I found Chunk, No Captain Chunk after them. And at least like their breakdowns, their riffs, their instrumentation, their focus on the sound of like pop punk, they sound very similar to A Day to Remember, although I will say A Day to Remember will always take the cake for me in terms of one of those bands that make you feel so nostalgic when you listen to their music. It's crazy to say, but A Day to Remember is one of those bands. They've literally captured, if you could capture the sound of nostalgia, that is what they have done. When I listen to their music, I feel very nostalgic, even though they're talking about their own life, their own situations, their own circumstances that they've been through. But it's very hard to do that as a band and to do it over and over and over again. So anyways, yeah, this was kind of a random reaction, how it all evolved, but I forgot how much I love these guys, and I haven't checked out their last two albums, like I said. So I think I'm going to pick one off of their latest album from 2021. The title of it is called Gone Are the Good Days. And I think before we get into that album, picking a song from that album, I'm going to play the song that I played in that Snapchat video. We're just going to jam out to that song, and then we're going to get into the reaction. I think that is going to be the best route to go for this music reaction that we're setting up. So let's go play it. The song that I was playing on my Snapchat story where I was jamming out and then made the short on YouTube, I also put it on my TikTok. The song was called Captain Blood from their first album, Something for Nothing. Let's fucking jam out for a second. In the outside, it sounds so much better when you're in a car, or like when I was in my truck. You know, it has heavier bass. But this will suffice. Wait for it. I fucking love those guitar riffs, man. They never get old. Oh God, it's so good, dude. They just bring the energy. If you like that song, you're gonna like the rest of the album. You're gonna like their second album. And again, those are really the only two albums that I can speak on because I haven't heard of the two newest albums. But they just know how to bring the energy. It's hard to decipher what they're saying sometimes because I believe they're from a different country. I think they're from France. And so some of the lyrics get blended a little bit just because of his accent, but their screams are really good. Their breakdowns are really good. Their instrumentals are really good. They sound very similar to like old A Day to Remember. And they are very much pop punk, but you can tell that they're doing other genres as well. So they're very genre bending. They kind of blend everything together. And I love when artists do that. I love when bands do that. I love just like when musicians don't stick to one defined genre, you know, they pull in all of their influences. Like it's just so boring to me if you only stick to one genre. So anyways, we had to hype ourselves up by listening to that song off of their first album. But now we're going to go to Gone Are the Good Days. This was the album that was dropped back in 2021. Somehow I missed it. It was released in the summer of that year. It was July 30th, 2021. And we're just going to go with the title track because that's one of the songs that has a star on it. So I imagine it's probably one of the more popular songs off of this album. And usually title tracks hold a lot of significance, importance, and meaning. So I'm going to try that song. It's 3 minutes. It's 45 seconds. Gone Are the Good Days. It is explicit, so we're going to hear some cuss words. I'll bring up the lyrics here on Apple Music and see if I can follow along, but for the most part, we're just going to try and take in the whole atmosphere of this song. Already got chills. He's got great vocals, dude. Oh, like the guitar. Question is, are we going to get a breakdown? I hope so. There goes the percussion, the drums. Oh shit. Yeah, we got some screaming. Breakdown. These lyrics are also very nostalgic, talking about the past. Now we're going soft. Totally pop punk vibes. All right, dude. Gone Are the Good Days, the title track off of the album Gone Are the Good Days by Chunk, No Captain Chunk. That was a good song, man. I very much enjoyed that. That was very pleasant. Not as hard and heavy as some of their harder and heavier tracks that I've listened to, which are my all-time favorites. They're my personal favorites from this band. But that had elements of being heavy and hard hitting, but it just wasn't the majority of the song. There was kind of a tiny little breakdown near the end, or like right after the middle or the halfway point of the song. You know, instrumentation was obviously very good. Different moments throughout the track where the instrumentation and everything, just the energy of the song kind of changed. Like at moments it was obviously faster. There at the end it slowed down a little bit, almost felt like it was going acoustic. And then at the end, you had like the chants and the clapping, and it wasn't just the vocals of the lead singer, Bertrand. It was like everybody in the band was chiming in and doing that chant. I think the biggest takeaway, the thing that kind of hits you the most, is I was reading the lyrics as I was listening to the song. I was trying to catch as many as I could. And it's like a very reminiscent and nostalgic song, because he's talking about the past, he's talking about the old days, he's talking about the times when they were unstoppable. He sees this person and all of these memories are brought back to him, and he's thinking to himself, like, where did the time go? How did we lose that energy? How did we get ourselves to a point where we're at right now? And I very much relate to that sort of questioning of things and like looking back and like analyzing your life, because I feel that way a lot of times at the age of 28 years old. You know, for me, like, I'm very transparent, I'm very real, very genuine and authentic when I come on this channel. And recently, like I've told you guys about things that I've been going through, what's been going on in my mindset, what's been going on for the majority of the last 4 months. And it's been a lot of challenges, man. And I actually got to see one of my best friends last night, Dakota Phillips, who I've mentioned on this channel before. You guys should go check out his art. Maybe I'll link that down in the description below, because his art is so fucking good. It's fucking amazing. That dude's come a long way in terms of creating art. You know, he started out really, his artistic avenue was taking pictures, and now he's doing like digital art. But anyways, you know, he's one of my best friends. He's always been one of my best friends, and we've always been super close, you know, probably since around like 2013, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. So about 10 years. You know, and when we were younger, obviously you don't have as many responsibilities. You don't have necessarily like bills to pay or anything like that. You're really just able to be blessed with just going out and hanging out with your friends every single day and adventuring, and, you know, kind of letting your mindset coast to the possibilities. You know, we had so much fun in those younger years, and not just only us two, but all of our other friends. And like, you know, last night I went over to his mom's new duplex because he was in town. He came down after he got off work, and, you know, we hung out for probably like 4 or 5 hours, and we're just outside. We're shooting hoops like the old times, playing basketball. He's telling me about some updates in his life. I'm telling him about updates in my life. And, you know, we're reminiscing on the past, but a part of it is like, it's also really fucking sad, because, you know, you will never get those days back. Those days are long gone. And I think when we're younger and we're going through those times, those good days that we like to reminisce on, it's kind of dangerous, because you get older and you reminisce on those days. And I think if you're not careful and you do that too much, it can immediately make you unhappy, and it can make you unhappy every single day, because you think that those were the good days and I'm never going to achieve anything like that ever again in my life. Because let's just face the sad reality. The sad fact of life is that you get older, and now you have a job that you have to focus on. You have to make money. You have to pay your bills. There's just so much more stress. There's so much more responsibility. And I understand that. That's reality. Like, I'm willing to accept that. I'm just saying, I think in America, we kind of have it ass backwards, that we just require everybody to go work and basically be, this worker bee and be a fucking slave away, where you never really get to focus on, your life so much, unless you owned your own business, and then you took all the money that way. But even then, if you start a business, you still have to sacrifice a bunch of time to get that business up and running off of the ground. And so, like, Dakota and I were just talking, and we're like, we fight this feeling a lot of times, both of us, him and I, mentioned that, just not being happy and dissatisfied with where we're at in life. And it is such a struggle right now. And it's like, I'm not saying that I want to go back to those previous times, although I look back at them like very fondly. But, I remember a lot of people saying when, I was younger, these are the best days of your life, and of your lives, and you don't even realize it just yet. But then you had other people saying, like, it only gets better. It only gets better with age. And I certainly think there are a lot of things that have gotten better with age. Like, wisdom is one of those things. You tend to learn a whole lot. You tend to get better. You refine your skill set. You develop, a bunch of skills as you get older. Hopefully, you're learning new skills. You're evolving. You're changing. You're transforming every single year. But you'll never get that innocence back. You'll never get that time back. You only look at those things through memories. And I think when we're young and we're having all of these first experiences, maybe that's why the world feels like this entire canvas, and we're just painting all of these different colors onto it because we're having all of these first experiences. But then you get older, and if you're not careful, and you kind of just stick to your bubble, and you never get out of your comfort zone. And if you never change your habits, or you never change any of the drop the vices that you have, that's where life becomes very mundane and very monotonous, and basically just black and white and gray. And, and then you look back at your life and you wonder, why is it this way? Why have things become this way? And so, it's just, in this song with those set of lyrics, it's very interesting to pose a lot of those questions, because I think a lot of people, including myself, we struggle with the same thing. Is I would say the last 4 years of my life, ever since I graduated college back in 2021 and started, really working full time. Don't get me wrong, there have been some really good moments in these last 4 years, but these last 4 years have sped up incredibly and have almost gone on in the blink of an eye. And not only that, it's where my life has started to feel very monotonous and mundane at points in time, because I think what happens is we get these full-time jobs. You feel like that's all you're able to focus on. You show up most of the time. I consider myself a good worker. I don't like to take a whole lot of PTO. I've gotten better at taking more PTO as I've gotten older, but you basically just run through your same routine. And I think that is one reason why, as an adult, as you get older, I think that's one reason why life speeds up, because now you stick to your routine, you stick to your schedule. And it's not like when you were younger and you were just exploring all of these things for the first time. I don't know what the balance is, because obviously, again, I respect reality. I respect the truth of the world, and the natural order is that you have to grow up at some point. I'm not saying I'm trying to go back to being a kid, but I really think everything that was so magical about our younger years, I'm even talking about, like I said, when I was 24, 23, 22, is I think we should never as adults lose the magical way of thinking as a child or in those adolescent years. Because children have such an expansive, creative mindset. And it's almost like the conditioning that they go through as they get older. They go through the education system in high school, and then if they go off to college, it feels like all of that is really just stripped away. The conditioning sets in, the propaganda sets in, you take on the influences of the education system, the political system, the media, the bias, the influence of your friends, your family, like all these different cultural and societal factors. And you kind of dumb yourself down. You kind of, in a lot of ways, get rid of that creative, innocent touch of being a child. There's a song that Mac Miller did off of Balloonerism, and it's called Excelsior. And he's basically hinting at this notion of like, when did life become so serious? It used to be that when you were a kid, you were eating applesauce, you were doing cartwheels, you were pretending that you were a wizard, you were trying to fight off Brussels sprouts and spinach. That was like your biggest enemy. And then basically as we get older, we strip away all of that. We strip away all of the fun, and everything becomes super serious, mundane, tight, no room to breathe. And again, posing the question here is like, I don't know what the answer is, because obviously as you get older, you should act more like an adult. You should become more mature. You should become a little bit more serious. But the threat is that as you get older, you start to look at your life through your memories. I do that more now than ever before. I think at 28, I'm always thinking about all the memories that I had and how things have changed, and we're never going to get that time back. It's never going to go back to that place, that feeling that we had, like with my best friend Dakota. And children don't look at the world that way because they don't really have any memories. They're experiencing life for the first time. So everything is just like grandiose, and their eyes are wide open, and they're taking in all of the stimulation. Their senses are alive. And then you get older and it all gets dumbed down, and it almost becomes really something that you have to focus on super hard as an adult to try and keep yourself awake and alive at all times. And I'm obviously speaking in tongues and like metaphorically and spiritually, but like that is the person that I am. I fight this. I fight what they're talking about in these lyrics, in this song. Bertrand is talking about probably, I'm assuming, those earlier years when they were just starting the band, and it all came out of pure love for it. It all came out of just undying passion in this pursuit, right? Like I think he said in the beginning, he's like, none of this was planned. None of this was expected. I mean, I'm sure they love that it happened, because that sort of lifestyle, making music and making money off of making music, like it provided them to continue to like go down that path, and that's amazing. But it was never a plan. It just kind of happened. And I think that happens for a lot of people. Like if you're doing something strictly for the love of it, you're going to be successful in it and you're going to make money off of it. And it's so relatable to a lot of people. It's relatable to me because like I'm sitting here thinking about the YouTube channel and the podcast that I do for me, but also for you guys. I've been doing this since 2020. And then with my friend Dakota, like even before I started my own podcast and this YouTube channel, him and I had a dual podcast that was called The Thought Observatory. And we were talking about it last night. Think about that title, The Thought Observatory. And then I called my shit Nurture the Mind. The whole reason that him and I were drawn to podcasts, started our dual podcast, and then I went off and I started my own, was because him and I growing up, and as we got closer in our relationship, our broship, our friendship, is that we loved having deep conversations with one another. We called them our bro talks. And like last night, I was like telling him, dude, whenever we have a bro talk, it always inspires me. It always gives me clarity moving forward. I feel like my third eye is opening up and all of the brain fog that's going on inside of my head dissipates and I'm able to see the path clearly. I love connecting with people and I love having deep, meaningful conversations where we try and iron out and ask specific, deep, hard questions to get to the bottom of this thing called reality. Try to figure out what the truth is. And so just by loving, connecting with people and having deep conversations, that's what started like the whole podcast between me and him. And then that fell apart at some point, and then I started my own thing. And sometimes, and feeling like even here recently with these last 4 months and all of this shit up in the air and all of this existential dread and anxiety of like, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to stop feeling like I'm behind, and feeling like, some of my relationships are falling apart. All these things that are going on in my head. I haven't felt that passion with doing the podcast and the YouTube channel. So I relate to these lyrics because you look back at when it all first started and it was just so easy. It was just so natural. You didn't even really have to try. I was always amped to record a podcast. I was always amped to make a video. And maybe that's just the natural ebb and flow, because I think those things kind of like sort of come and go at times. You're not always going to have passion. You're not always going to feel great about the thing that you're doing. But I just miss how it felt back then. And not only with this, but also just in everyday life, relationships that I had. And so, again, man, maybe I'm asking questions that shouldn't be asked because it's just reality, and people that watch this video in the comments below are going to be like, yeah, man, that's the nature of reality. That's called being an adult. I hear you, but I also feel like we've been conditioned to think that. And there may be some truth to it, but I also think it's not entirely healthy. Yes, you still have your obligations. You have your responsibilities. You got to make money. You got to pay the bills. But there are so many people out there in the world, here in America, that are really unhappy and face these same obstacles and questions that I'm posing right now in this video, based off this reaction, based off of this song that I just listened to, based off of the lyrics that are in this song. Maybe I'm going too far. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much. Those lyrics were nostalgic, but you could tell there is still some type of pain behind those lyrics. Because Bertrand is saying, it's not like how it used to be, man. Gone are the good days. That's the most depressing thought that any of us could ever have. Those, that's how we talk about it a lot of times, is in our past, early 20s, whatever, high school. Those were the good days. We're never going to get the good days back. Well, shit, dude. You might be saying that and you're like 28. And if you live, a pretty healthy life, you might go to 100. And you're saying that like, those were the good days, and then you just have to grit it out for another 70, 75 years. That's super depressing. That would make people like want to kill themselves. I struggle with that, man. Yeah, those were the good days, but is there a way moving forward to create more good days, or days that are even better, that like top that? I don't know, guys. This is the reaction. That song made me think, and it's relatable. If you really look at the lyrics, it's super fucking relatable. So I'll end there before I go on, an even longer rant. I don't want to vent too long. And also, my basketball team, Oklahoma City Thunder, is in Game 7 today. It's coming up at 2:30 right now. It is 2:18, and they're playing the Denver Nuggets. It's the last game in the series. Whoever wins this game moves on to the Western Conference Finals. So at that point, it'll be 4 teams left in the playoffs before we get down to the final 2 that will be in the finals. So I'm going to go watch that game. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the reaction, the review. As always, if you're new to the channel, there's 4 things that I ask that you do. Number 1 would be please subscribe to the channel if you are not already. Number 2 is please like the video that you just watched, this video. Number 3, comment in the comment section below. I love hearing from you guys. I love interacting with you guys, hearing your stories about how you came across a song, a particular artist, a band, whatever, sort of nostalgia you have with that musician, that band. Let me know. Tell me about it, man. I love talking about music. It's one of the things in my life that I'm super passionate about. And then number 4, please share the message as well. So basically do one of those 4 things. If you enjoyed this content, if you thought that it was valuable, if you thought it was entertaining, basically if it was not a waste of your time, do me a solid and do one of those 4 things. All of those things help my channel grow and gets my message out to more and more people so we can grow this channel, so we can grow this community, this podcast of like-minded people. You guys have been so amazing in supporting me, and I know I don't have a crazy amount of followers. I'm not even at 2,000, but bro, I did this for a long time for free, and I would continue to do it for free. So it's not really what I'm after, but obviously it'd be cool, to have more and more people come over here and see what we're about. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining me. It's been a fun time as always. That was a great song. Makes me want to go into the rest of this album. I love you guys. I will see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.